What is one secret your parents can never know? Go north. Good on you for being that filter. I shudder to think about people going through my shit after I die and finding all my skeletons. Is there an official term for this? Should this be a thing? I need to designate someone to do this, otherwise I'll ruin a lot of memories of me. Edit. A lot of people have suggested porn buddy. I'd get punched in the face if I went to my best friend and said, Larry, we've known each other a long damn time. Let's be porn buddies. Surely we can come up with a better term that requires little or no explanation. It was me who superglued the fridge shut. I just blamed it on my brother. As a younger brother, you fucking asshole. This is nowhere as serious as some of the things in this thread, but it's easily my favorite. Hey, at least you didn't use the ones she was in. He did. He's just in denial. He just didn't look at his mom and just tells himself he cropped it out. The justification denial over the years goes like this. Well, I only glanced at my mom. Well, I only saw my mom out of the corner of my eye. Well, I was so focused on her friend I didn't even notice my mom anymore. It's almost like I cropped her out using my mind. I cropped her out. He still has yet to acknowledge that he spent time physically editing out his mother's naked body. This is why you never use obvious folder names like private or nudies. My folder's name is like taxes 2011 or some shit. I was brought up in a pretty religious home. My family had me in theater, choir, youth group, and all kinds of other extracurricular activities to keep me out of trouble. So they trusted me pretty well. One night, I was about 15. My boyfriend at the time had come over to watch movies. The stipulation was that we could lay in the bed and watch the movie, but the door had to be open. After a while, my mom came in to check on us and everything was fine. So she thanked my boyfriend for being a gentleman and shut the door on her way out. Immediately, as if the door shut had triggered some teenage hormone overload, we started making out and fooling around. He slid his hand up my shirt for a bit, but finally having some privacy, I soon directed his hand to mine bits. Yay first, not self-stimulated, orgasm. We never got caught, which was considered a major triumph, and we found ways after that to hook up without my parents knowing. It wasn't until a few months later at my youth's purity ball, yes, we signed pledges and war rings to signify our abstinence for God and marriage, that my dad delivered this humiliating speech. He told the congregation he was proud of the strong lady I had become, that regardless of having a boyfriend, I stood up to teen peer pressure and hormones, and that he witnessed me deflect an attempt at immoral behavior while watching movies with my boyfriend one night. Apparently, the blinds had been open and my bed faced them from in the house. He happened to be walking in from the garage and caught a peek at me removing my boyfriend's hand from my boob. I was mortified. The secret he must never know: the night I got my first orgasm, he thought I deflected my boyfriend from touching my boobs, when in reality I was actually directing him much further south. TLDR. Dad thought I was sitting on the bench for God, when I was really rounding second with David. TLDR is a 10/10. Replace bourbon from a priceless bottle of liquor with Evan Williams when I was 15. I found out later my parents were saving the bottle for their 50th anniversary. It was given to them by my great-grandpa at their wedding. Still have 23 years to break the news. You have the internet, and 23 years to find a replacement. Put together a bang-ass collection of rare bourbon and an eloquent apology speech. He might be able to find the same bourbon honestly. Plus, bourbon doesn't age in the bottle, so it'll be the exact same shit. This isn't the most serious, by far, of the confessions in this thread, but for some reason it's the most irksome. Psuite, you son of a bitch. After my sis died I locked myself in her room and went through everything alone before her friends or my parents went through her stuff to pack it away or give it to her friends. I found naked pics, empty bottles of alcohol and a letter she had wrote, but I guess never gave, to her then boyfriend telling him the story of how she was raped as a younger teenager. I threw everything like that out but kept that letter. It's been 12 years and I just found the letter again as I was packing up to make room for baby. I can't bring myself to throw it away. I suggest the term Halamaker, because they make sure you're remembered as an angel. Relevant movie, World's Greatest Dad with Robin Williams. I have my Google Inactivity monitor set up to email my best friend with the key and copy of my password database and a list of accounts and cloud storage to delete. The nice thing about living in this era is that all my secrets are digital. There's no chance of a repeat of the episode where I moved out of home and my mom stumbles across a CD binder of categorized porn clips collected from Usenet in the early 2000s. I was very into hentai at that time, and my tastes have only gotten weirder. Thank you AskReddit hippies. I'm going to need a little more info about how you did this setup please. And I'm going to need a little more info about the weird shit you AskReddit hippies is now into please. Here's a good starting point. Sign in Google account's webpage. You're a good bro getting rid of that stuff before anyone saw. I'm sure she'd be thankful. I was 10ish and my dad had just painted the boiler room door orange in our basement. My younger brother and I were pushing each other around on a scatterboard in basement and my dad warned us, "Don't you dare hit this door with your skateboard." 15 minutes later I'm picking my brother up from the ground and looking at a hole in my dad's orange door caused by said skateboard. Definitely not telling dad. Instead I grab a piece of orange construction paper and a glue stick to patch the hole. It matched surprisingly well. 27 years later that construction paper is still holding strong and I have never heard a word about it from my op. Edit. I just blew my cubby all. Just for you. I texted my mom and asked her to take a photo of the door. Looks like the years have faded it. So by request, here is a photo of the door. Imgur webpage. Edit. Wow. Gilded. That's fantastic. Thank you much. Well, it is construction paper. I glued a piece of paper over a hole in the door in our military housing and passed inspection with flying colors. It worked surprisingly well. I accidentally put a hole in my ceiling while putting together a futon. Put one of those blank electrical panels over it with a couple of drywall screws and the landlord never noticed. Total cost was about $3. Highly recommended over the 100 or so USD they usually charge for holes. Edit. Since people seem to ask about it enough, here is the post where I explain what happened. What is one secret your parents can never know? AskReddit webpage. Okay. Everybody is commenting he knew. What I'm more impressed by is that in 27 years, no one ever accidentally tapped the paper with their foot, or it never got wet or anything. That's absurd. How can it still be in place looking like new? This happened in my freshman year of high school. So one of my friends got a hold of some weed, and I haven't tried it before, so we had the stupid idea to smoke it. He came over along with some other friends of mine. The original plan was to go to forest near my house to smoke it, but it was cold so we didn't want to. One of us wanted to smoke it on my porch, but I disagreed. I forgot how, but we came up with the stupidest idea and hotbox in my bathroom. Keep in mind my parents were gonna be home from work in an hour, and if they found out my life would be done. We quickly made a shitty bong out of a Gatorade bottle, then removed everything from my bathroom. We lit up the weed and smoked for like 10 minutes. Once we were done we quickly cleaned up and emptied a whole Axe bottle in the bathroom. My friends being stoned as fuck left. I went back upstairs to check the bathroom and it smelled like flat out weed. I tried to use every possible thing to get the smell out but it didn't work. I called my parents. They have the same job, and they said they were 15 minutes away. I knew I was fucked. Now keep in mind my parents are extremely strict and if they caught me I would be over. This is when I thought of the stupidest thing any sane human would think. Burn my bathroom down. I ended up lighting some towels on fire and trying my hardest to burn the sink area. It ended up catching on fire but it was slow. I quickly called 911 and 3 minutes later fire department. I see fire trucks out my house. They took care of the fire and my parents came home shocked. Half of my bathroom was charred and the door knocked down. Fire department said it was probably an electrical current from the outlet that burned a towel. I slept that night thinking how stupid I was and what I just did. To this day my parents don't know. TLDR. Hotboxed in my bathroom and set fire to it to get the smell out and prevent from being caught. Parents still think it was an accident. When you guys went to Hawaii I put Milo, cat down. He was sick, in incredible pain. Couldn't eat or drink. Couldn't even move to get to the litter box. When you left on vacation he was too weak to even yowl in pain anymore. I couldn't stand to see that cat in so much pain and so afraid, so I did the only thing I could do to help him end his life humanely. My parents were 100% against putting down a pet regardless of how much it is suffering, so they'd be beyond mad if they knew this. Putting a pet to sleep is never easy, but you absolutely did the right thing. Milo was probably thanking you for it. Why don't people have the same view for humans? One time I dropped an entire roll of toilet paper into the bowl when trying to change it. I didn't want them to know I ruined an entire roll, so I hid it in my closet, and over a course of a few weeks I would rip away pieces and throw them away. Edit. Since some people seem to be assuming my parents were horrible and I was frightened, that's definitely not the case. I was just a dumb kid that was embarrassed about dropping a whole roll in the toilet. You went to an extreme length to get away with that. It's the Shawshank method. I remember thinking it would take a man 600 years to rip a roll of toilet paper to shreds. Old same potato did it in less than a few weeks. Or I hope you whispered back that he hadn't. It was nice. Your mum sounds sweet. It's always a Catholic girl. My address. My parents are psychotic. We'll find it sooner or later, dear. We're everywhere, hiding in plain sight, in the north and the south, the east and the west. This is the most innocent response in the thread, and it reminds me of something I did once when I was 7 or so. I was playing before bed and I somehow frayed the cord of my bedside lamp. So when my mom came in, I told her and she said, okay, we'll fix it, replace the cord in the morning. Just leave it unplugged. I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and forgot that my lamp was broken, so I plugged it back in to be able to see where I was going, and a couple of sparks popped out of the frayed section. Terrified, I quickly unplugged it and ran to the bathroom to get a cup of water and then poured it onto the section of the carpet where the sparks landed, and disappeared. I must have sat there for a half hour worried that I was going to start a fire, and I wanted to be sure nothing happened. I remember sleeping terribly that night, anxious that our house was going to burn down, and going over the evacuation plan we learned how to make in school. There's no way I could be like the forest fire meth lab kid. This is the cutest thing I have ever read. So, when I was 6 or 7 we had Christmas with the extended family. One of my uncles was there, and I was always a bit afraid of him because he had done some time for a drug charge and just gotten out within the last year or two. Anyway, I walk into the kitchen at one point, and he is there with this giant wedge of cheese. He looks up and asks if I wanted any. I nod, because I fucking love cheese. He says okay, but you cannot tell your parents because you'll ruin your dinner, they will get mad at me, and he slices me a few pieces. We eat in silence and then I leave, convinced that I was an accomplice in some terrible act with my ex-uncle. To this day, I have never told my parents as to what would happen if they found out. Well, then they would know that the reason I didn't eat that one Christmas dinner in the early 90s was because I had already filled up on expensive cheese. My sister and I were reading through my mom's old high school yearbook, and we kept seeing everyone's sign saying something along the lines of, "Congrats, you and X are perfect together, X is not our dad," and we had never heard X's name mentioned before. After a little more digging we found out she had married X right out of high school, divorced, then married our father. Neither of us really cared, but it was still a huge shock she hasn't told us now that we're both in our mid-20s. Edit. I subconsciously used X as the name, not even realizing it came from the most popular story on Reddit at the moment. Well, I would say you dodged a bullet there, cause now X likes to mess around with married women. He usually just holds hands though, so NBD. My dad always tells me I was so whipped by my girlfriend back in high school, and the example he always uses is that one time she told me to change out of my sweatshirt. What really happened is that she pointed out the huge cum stain that she left on my sweatshirt the night before, and I figured I should change it to avoid awkwardness on our day out with my family. My dad thinks I lost my virginity earlier than I actually did. He thought he'd walked in on me post-sex with my GF at the time, but we'd actually just been play fighting, and the moment he walked in was the moment she decided to put the strap for her top back on her shoulder. After that I find out my dad's told half of my family about this, and despite me trying to tell him I hadn't done anything, he claimed to have believed me, but didn't, so he'll never know when I actually did, because he believes a lie. Edit. I was 17/18 when the play fight happened. I lost my virgin some years later in my early 20s. Is he proud that you lost your virginity at that age, or do you think he's disappointed or something? If anything, the whole thing seemed a bit negative. I think he may have been disappointed. Either way, in reality I was 20/21. So I was a shitload more sensible than he thought. And the moment he walked in was the moment she decided to put the strap, for her top back on her shoulder. Oh. When I was 8, me and my sister cracked my dad's chessboard. We hid the pieces in someone else's trash can. My dad has had it since he was 11. He was 46 at the time and he was fuming mad. He thought he lost it, and he still does. Looking back, do you think he could have repaired the chessboard? I would feel so guilty if I realized later that I not only broke it, but removed any possible chance of closure. How to use a computer. Apparently, my mother-in-law is the same way. She keeps getting viruses and asking us to fix it, even though we live 19 hours away, or buy her a new one. She recently started seeing a guy who's a gamer and has suddenly decided she wants us to buy her a gaming PC, even though the most advanced game she plays is Candy Crush. 1. Get her an antivirus program like AVG or Avast. Make it very clear that she should never touch it. 2. Get Firefox or Chrome. Disguise it as IE if you must. 3. Get Adblock. Be sure to whitelist some sites like Reddit. 3. Get TeamViewer. 4. Get a $40 fancy looking case and just move all of her current computer parts into it. 4. Charge $2,000 for the computer and the building. Alienware, is that you? Mother-in-law calls. Help, the antivirus says the file I downloaded is a virus and to delete it what do I do? You delete it, but how do I make the antivirus pop-up go away? You click the little X. But you said never to touch it. Just close it and delete the file. No, but you said if I touch it I'll get viruses. I am just going to get another computer. Ditto. It's only been a year and a half since I've gotten it. Really? How often is anyone in my family going to see my upper thigh? A family that fucks together stucks together. Stucking intensifies. When I got engaged, my very Catholic mother whispered to me, has he tried to kiss you yet? I'm a semi-famous dominatrix, and have been since 3 years before she asked that question. There is a river in front of you flowing rapidly. There is a log on the riverbank and a northern cyborg sitting on a nearby rock. Possible directions are south, S, east, E, or west, W. What would you like to do? Check inventory. You have an old pack of ham and cheese Lunchables, a stick, a DVD of Jack and Jill, a match, and a soggy torch. Read DVD. 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. You weird in Chicago. Well, we've narrowed it down to the Chicago metro area. Plot twist. You weird in Chicago is actually in Tokyo. That one of my childhood friends and I used to play with each other's penises. It was fun. And we liked it. I'm a married, straight guy, but this information would shorten their lifespan undoubtedly. Experimenting like that when you're young is common, natural, and harmless. Nothing to worry about. Edit. Let me clarify something here. Prepubescent kids fooling around and asking about each other's bodies is what's common, natural, and harmless. If someone is being taken advantage of, being manipulated, etc., or if the situation involves a kid and a teenager, adult, whatever, that is sexual abuse. I feel weird having to explain this, but apparently some people are confused. Have him over for a hot tub party, or a hot rub party. When I was younger, I read in my mom's journal that she had an abortion before she was pregnant with me. She doesn't know that I know, and I'm not sure how she would react. I'm just glad they decided to keep the second pregnancy. Dear Diary, today I took care of a little problem. Dear Diary, 8 months ago I thought I had taken care of a second little problem, but it does not seem like it worked. She had an abortion, but it just didn't take. Yeah, accidentally found out my mom had a miscarriage. Those things just aren't dinner table conversation. Edit for typo. I actually found out not that long ago that my mom had 2 miscarriages between my brother and I. He's 24, I'm 22. Hell of a commitment to getting another kid, isn't it? Like 30% of all women have either a miscarriage or something like that. I remember it being a really high number, but since it's so taboo to talk about, most people won't know that they know people who have had them. Edit. Looks like it was 10-25%. Still though, damn. Miscarriage, signs, symptoms, treatment and prevention webpage. My mom is actually pretty open about it and told us that she has had 2 abortions. At that time we were doing real shit in terms of money, and my mom thought that she couldn't raise them properly with her already having 4 kids, so she decided to have the abortion. She sometimes still regret her decision, and wonder what her 2 other kids would have been now. Kinda weird hearing it from her though, and knowing that you could have 2 other siblings. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations are up on this one. So why not? I was a junior in high school, and had some friends into LAN parties who were seniors, but I couldn't really join them because my family was pretty poor and neither them or I could afford a computer for me to use at that time. So one day my older friend gave me one of their older PCs Pentium 3, with a couple parts missing, RAM, HDD, that I could build out for myself. Now about 15 years later it's turned out to be a great jumping off point because now I'm a successful system administrator and love working in the IT field, and I owe it in many ways to that first computer I learned to build back up from scratch and make my own. Only they didn't give me that computer, we stole it from the high school. Sorry not sorry, I totaled my first car when I was 16. They knew about that. They came to pick me up and talk to the police officer while I was moving things from my car to theirs. What they didn't know about was the liter of vodka in my trunk, which I quickly and quietly speed walked to my parents' trunk. Neither the cop nor my parents knew a thing. I very nearly shat my pants. Disclaimer, I did not drink and drive. The trunk was just the only place my parents never checked and I happened to be a rowdy teenager that I used to sneak into sister bedroom after bedtime and play Game Boy with her. God, I felt like such a ninja. I held my breath for a moment. Thank God that's all you did. I know. I thought for a second he might have been playing DS with her. Mine's kind of long. My dad was always a heavy drinker. Growing up, it wasn't uncommon for him to get so drunk he'd fall down. In fact, he was banned from several bars for being such an unmanageable drunk. It's not that he would cause trouble or fights, despite him being a pretty big and intimidating looking guy. He was actually a really nice guy and likable when he was drinking. He was just annoying and a liability when he'd get so drunk he'd start falling down, getting hurt, breaking things, and being a burden to the other patrons. So because of this, he drank at home a lot. He would drink large amounts of whiskey and on some nights he'd wind up falling down when stumbling to the bathroom or the fridge. This was a regular occurrence in my childhood and over the years, and it kind of became commonplace. I'd usually help him up if I could and other times I'd let him lie there and just try to make him comfortable, let him pass out and leave him to it. My mom would usually be in bed and not hear him fall, but I'd always hear it, regardless of how or where he fell. The sound was almost always the same. Well, one night when I was staying at home on Christmas break from college, I was laying in bed and I heard that sound. He had fallen. It was around 2:45 AM. I got up to check on him per usual and he was lying next to the table on the floor. I went over to help him up. He grunted a little bit and wasn't helping me help him up at all. He was unusually loose and limp, wasn't speaking coherently and not attempting to help me at all. I figured it was because he was drunker than usual. Since I wasn't going to be able to get him back in his chair or even to his feet, I figured I'd make him comfortable and leave him there. So I went over my usual routine, checked his head to make sure he wasn't bleeding or badly injured, hide his whiskey bottle so he wouldn't get up and drink more, and looked to make sure his glasses weren't broken, cleaned them, and put them on the table, turn him on his side just in case he vomited. Surprisingly, he rarely puked. When I took his glasses off he had a strained look on his face and an expression that seemed to stare right through me. I usually ask if he's okay and I usually get a grumbled yeah or something similar, but all I got this time was a long strained grunt. Again, I figured he was just super drunk and didn't think much of it. I turned off the TV and went to bed. I woke up 3 hours later to my mom frantically banging on my door. She sounded panicked and blurted out, "I think your dad's dead." I sprinted into the kitchen and found him laying in the exact same spot I had left him. His body was cold to the touch. He wasn't breathing. He had died. When the coroner finally arrived, he estimated the time of death to be around 3 or 4 AM. Later we learned the death was actually a heart attack. When I look back, I wonder if the small unusual behaviors I noticed but didn't really pay attention were actually side effects of him having a heart attack. His behavior was different than usual and he was heavily intoxicated, but I can't help but wondering if my dad was dying right in front of me without me noticing. At the time I blamed myself for leaving him there and not investigating further. He died right where I left him. I felt terrible and I carried that guilt for a long time. I now know it's not my fault, but I still feel guilty from time to time. On the day Dad died, Mom asked me if I had heard him fall that night. My initial guilt and shame led me to lie and tell her no. I must have slept through it. I feared if I told her all of this she'd blame me. Of course, I know she wouldn't blame me, but I am still not sure about some of my family on my dad's side. I know for sure some of them would be disgusted I left him on the floor. Yeah, it sounds fucked up, but that's just how it was growing up in my house. I've never told a soul about this and never plan to, except Reddit I guess, because I'm afraid of people will think of me as the pose who let his dad die. TLDR, drunk dad fell. I left him on the floor and he died. I can never tell them that my number one goal as a parent is to handle relationship issues differently than they did. They went through an extremely messy divorce when I was 8 and my only memory of them together is them screaming at each other and my sister and I hiding in our rooms. Then it was 10 plus years of them talking shit about each other to us, putting us in the middle of all their arguments, and giving us a huggy guilt trip whenever they felt like we were spending more time with the other one than with them. It's been 20 years now and my mom will still talk shit about my dad and stepmom every once in a while, despite me asking her over and over to stop. I am happily married, but if I were to ever get divorced I will never put my daughter in the middle of arguments, speak badly about her father to her, or make her feel guilty for having a relationship with him. It's the number one thing I learned from my parents and I think they would be devastated to realize the true effect it has had on me. TBH, the kind of people who use their children like that aren't usually the type to be devastated about it later. Sorry. Internet hugs though, you seem to have learned from their mistake and good on you. I had a friend in elementary school who was always weird when it came time to go home. Years later I found out he didn't want to go home because his parents would force their problems on him even though he was 10. Like, not only their divorce but also they'd yell at him for money problems. Basically he was their verbal punching bag. Felt bad for him ever since I found out. Wow, that brought flashbacks of being in 3rd grade and wondering what the fuck I was going to do about our mortgage. If this is still ongoing, I don't know why you would hide it from them. Let them know that it continues to upset you and that you've made it a goal never to be like them. Furthermore, for the sake of your daughter not having to go through her grandparents doing this to her, you should probably draw a line in the sand somewhere. I was molested as a child by a babysitter 10 years older than I. My parents were trying to help her out because she was having issues in her abusive home. Her father was tossed in jail. This went on from what I can remember for at least 2 years. I was 4-5 years old. I didn't tell anyone until I started dating at 14. My parents do not know because A, they were trying to help her, and I felt sorry for her. I realized that her hurting me voids this, but for a preschooler's mind it didn't work that way. B, by the time I felt I could say something, so much time had passed that all I could see happening was me hurting my parents, making them blame themselves. Why do that? I see this person from time to time in passing at the supermarket. We have mutual acquaintances. People bring her up. That bothers me. I don't care what is happening in her life. I think she was going through some fucked up shit and passed it on. I feel sorry for her. When I see her I look her in the eye and stand strong. Almost to say you know what you did and I am not broken because of it. Edit. Word. When I was in elementary school, I was at Target with my mom and sister. At the checkout counter I saw these cinnamon flavored Tic Tacs, and I had to have them, because I hadn't fully developed the whole want-need function in my brain. I knew my mom wouldn't buy them for me, so I grabbed them sneakily, and put them in my pocket. Sneakily, I felt pretty guilty the whole way home, and didn't make eye contact with anyone in case they could read my mind. As soon as I was inside the safety of my home, I made my way upstairs, sneakily, and opened my hot goods. They were awful. Easily my least favorite Tic Tac. I ended up throwing them in the garbage can outside, sneakily, to avoid any suspicion. This is my shame, and I carry it alone. Except now with theoretically thousands of people. TLDR, the only time I ever stole anything, the fruits of my victory turned rotten in my mouth. The police are on their way. Target doesn't forgive. Target doesn't forget. God forgives, Target don't. Only Target can judge me. The authorities have been notified. Sneakily, I did almost the exact same thing. My dad was stationed in England and we were at the checkout counter of this local grocery. My 4-year-old eyes fell on these mint sweets rolled up in a little cylinder and I knew my mom would say no. So I took them. The ending is different from yours, but just as bitter. I love those candies, with a dying passion. I savored and rationed them so I had one a night for like 10 days or so. I visited England and have searched and searched for them but have never found them. The outside was hard candy and an icy blue, but the center was like a sweet minty thick syrup that was almost the consistency of the insides of a Cadbury creme egg. I tasted heaven wrongfully and am doomed to die never tasting it again. Edit. So I've looked up these soft mints and I need further description. Are they like a crispy coating with a chewy center like Mentos? Because if that is the case, then they don't fit the bill. The candies I remember, and the memory is hazy at this point, were a hard candy on the outside, like a Jolly Rancher, and the center was not chewy, it was syrupy. I'm going to check out the Hall Soothers, but not banking too much on that as I don't remember Hall being a big brand in England. Could be wrong though. Thanks for all your help, Reddit. You give me hope, and I am totally up for doing a candy swap with someone in England if we can pinpoint my missing mints. Edit number 2. Looked up the Soothers, and I don't think that's it. The only thing that comes close, visually, is the image on a package of Freshen Ups, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't gum. Dutch Valley Food's webpage. English sweets. I feel like it could be soft mints. Edit. Trevor soft mints. Yep, definitely soft mints. Forget Jennick. Now I have to know if Dovey ever gets his soft mints. Glad to hear you're in a better place now. Edit. I can't believe I have to clarify this comment. I'm happy to hear you're no longer suicidal. It was genuine and not at all intended to ruffle feathers. A link to some hotline numbers from the people over at AskReddit. Reddit, the front page of the internet webpage. That was my big secret for a while. It was so much better after I told my parents, though. They were really upset, of course, but it turned out that my dad understood a lot more than I thought as he has had his own suicidal thoughts. I've got a much better relationship with my parents now and it feels much more real. My parents told the extended family when I was in the hospital, and I'm still upset that they did that without talking to me. But my extended family was all much more sympathetic and encouraging than I would have thought. It's also a relief not to feel like I have a huge secret anymore. I will say, though, that I won't ever tell them the details of what I did to myself. They just don't need to know that. Not all parents will be so understanding, of course, and even with mine there were some really tough times. But the fact that you say what upset them would be that you didn't come to them first suggests to me that they would be really supportive. Again, though, I'm saying all this but still haven't told my parents I'm gay, so I'm really not one to talk here. You all G now? I was a cam girl for a while, also my first boyfriend was a predator, not in the fun alien way. Throwaway cause ain't no way they can find out about this shit. When I was about 10 I discovered the ability to jerk in my gherkin. Oh those were great times tugging in the shower. I soon after discovered the vast world of the internet and its dark places. One day I decided to start going at it in my room. Well it was about time to finish up and had nowhere to shoot, so I splodged on the floor and rubbed it in. No big deal, right? Our carpet was an off-white so when I rubbed it in it would just disappear. I did this for 10 years people. I had no idea it just smelled. I guess neither did my parents. One day they started to notice the stench. They chalked it up to my dog always laying in my room and my friends having stank ass feet. As did I. One day I got curious after learning jizz glows under black light. Borrowed my brother's black light. Went to my room. Closed the door. Flipped the switch. And, holy shit, the carpet in my room was brighter than the morning sun. I noped the fuck out of there with that black light and buried that memory to this day. 4 years later my GF starts going on and on about how jizz smells like dirty wet dog and feet after it's dry. And it clicks. My room stank of jizz for years. That's a dirty secret I'll take to the grave. TL. DR my room was a literal jizz palace. Edit. Fail this blow up. You guys crack me up. Glad to know I wasn't the only one splodging all over the carpet in my room. PS don't tell my parents. You think your mum hasn't ever caught some yogurt? You should have been more civilized and used a cum box. What the fuck is wrong with all you object jizzers? Use a goddamn tissue toilet paper towel. The window I closed wasn't really a pop-up. I signed a lease for an apartment in Florida before I came back home from my internship down at Disney. I came back home and never went back down. I paid for it for a year. My roommates wouldn't let me have some one sublease. It was a horrible situation and I fucked up. I don't need to hear it from my parents on how stupid and young I was. Boy, damn. So you paid rent for a year for a room you never stayed in? That I did $354.58 every month from July 2013. June 2014. I still hate myself. When I was about 11 or 12 I was going through my pyromaniac stage. One Saturday, I decided I would grab a steel can and fill it with gasoline and head to the woods. Now, this wasn't just your typical old can of SpaghettiOs. This was a 1-gallon bulk-sized can, filled to the brim. I took it to the woods and decided it would be cool just to light it on fire and see what would happen. I lit it and it caught like I expected and kept burning inside the can. After about 15 minutes I got bored and went to try and put it out. In the process, I knocked the can over, spreading gasoline all over the forest floor, and it erupted in a ball of flame. I quickly ran back to my house to get water and I come running back with about 5 gallons. By this point the fire had spread tremendously and my efforts were useless. I decided my best bet would be to run inside and play video games. Luckily the spot in the woods was pretty good ways away from my parents' house, so it didn't draw my parents' attention immediately. After about an hour or so, the entire fire department is on scene battling the 3-4 acres of forest fire that is roaring. There was a road that runs behind my house and the fire basically engulfed all of the forest separating my parents' house and this road. This road is notorious for drug dealers and meth houses. While the firefighters are trying to battle the flames, it is discovered that the house closest to the fire is a rather large cookhouse and cops show up and a huge bust goes down. Naturally, the fire was blamed on them and my parents just accepted that. It is now 20 years later and my parents still do not know, nor will they ever know. TL. Doctor set fire to 3-4 acres of woods. Meth house got blamed. Parents will never know. Edit. Jesus Christ. I posted this way late and expected it to get buried so quick, but maybe 5-10 people who were bored at work, like me, would see it and get a laugh. I never expected double gold or a fuck ton of karma. I feel like I don't deserve this. Funny to think how your action probably influenced the life of these drug dealers there. Well, they might have gotten caught eventually anyway, but imagine if they ever found out this is why they got busted. They would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the meddling kids. Would have. You can't just point it out, you have to instruct, too. I would have gotten away with it if it isn't for you meddling kids. I decided my best bet would be to run inside and play video games. Holy cow, I haven't laughed so hard for so long. He's outsourcing this problem to the adults. Wow, I played with fire a bit as a youngling too. But damn, this is fairly dark. When I had just went off to college, I was involved in some activity that was pretty not good. I had started writing college papers, especially for the remedial English and foreign language students for cash. I didn't really need the cash, but I was just really good at it. At one point, one of my customers couldn't pay, so I arranged for him to pay me in sexual favors. At the time I was really only interested in it because it was a power play, or so I thought, but eventually it became a primary way of getting paid laid. I really got off on it. It didn't occur to me until much later that this was essentially me being gay and having a messed up way of dealing with it. Anyways, papers for blowjobs, usually from straight guys, or guys looking to pass, and often from desperate students looking to avoid being flunked out and then returning home. I got a fair number from cute girls as well. I remember around midterms of my second semester of freshman year I wrote about 40 papers. I was getting blown 2 or 3 times a day for weeks, depending on the work level. It was 2 or 3 blows. A few of the girls I fucked proper. Of course, I ended up getting caught when the girlfriend of a customer blower went to the dean for academics and blew the door off of the closet. Being a good entrepreneur, I had a ledger, records, customer service notes, writing samples from the students that had ordered papers, estimated grades and actual grades, you know, to improve my product. Also, some recordings of my better payments being received. I was of course instantly expelled. I didn't tell my parents. Instead, I moved in with some people from Craigslist near campus. That next semester I worked on getting myself in shape. I worked a lot doing temp jobs and doing some straight up legit paper writing, and eventually saved up enough money to travel south of the US border, assume a fake identity, and smuggle myself into the US under a false name. I do not happen to be Hispanic, and I don't speak Spanish. I established myself for the rest of the next semester in town under my fake identity, and then I applied to the same school, and was accepted on the spot after an in-person interview. I got a new student ID, which helped me get a new license. I changed departments and went into a new major. Everything went normally after that. I continued going to school and was given a full scholarship under my fake identity. I occasionally ran into people I knew from my first go around. I told them I was allowed back in probation, but then avoided them. It got real dicey during graduation. I had started to change my fake identity so that I could pass between my real name and the fake one, using a shared nickname. When the time for commencement came, there was a form to write phonetically how to say your name. I used the nickname, and then mutated the last name so that I could sort of blame the speaker to both my friends who only knew my fake name, and my parents and family, who were in the audience. I got my diploma, and graduated. About a year after I graduated, I forged some paperwork to show a legal name change from my fake identity to my real name. I filed it with the school, paid a fee, and got a new diploma in my new name. I told the registrar that I had been illegal when I was the school, and she was really caring and understanding. I told her now that I had gotten my residency I could use my proper name and date of birth. She had to fiddle with the computer, probably to erase the old me, and eventually she got it to stick. A month or so later, I called someone else and added my real SSN to my record, so that I could be verified using the automated credential verification service. TLER. Got expelled, assumed fake identity, merged them back into one. It's been 15 years and I seem to be in the clear. I spent the night in jail for possession of marijuana 5 years ago. Not a big deal really, but it would kill my mom if she found out I have been in a jail cell. That I was the one that blew up the toilet. To this day my stepdad thinks someone broke into my house, smashed the toilet, and left. Edit. Grammar. I seriously hate when someone break into my house just to smash my toilet. Like, with a car, my toilet usually gets smashed after I have a spicy curry. Bullshit. There is no way an adult would actually believe that there is a toilet smasher running around committing breaking and entering just to smash a toilet. Yeah, people grossly underestimate their parents. Just because you were dumb as a kid doesn't mean they were dumb when you were a kid. It's incredible. I sat down with my dad one time and laid everything on the table. He knew every fucking time I was bullshitting when I was growing up. You realize they know exactly what you did because they did it before. It also reminded me that I tried some really fucking stupid lies when I was a kid. As a rule, parents know. They know everything. Except that guy who lit 4 acres of forest on fire, played video games, and the fire department ended up busting and blaming a local meth house. That guy's parents do not know everything. Does that mean if I start doing exactly this, I'll never get caught simply because no one will believe it's happening? Story like this a little bit on the radio last year. Kid just got a BB gun and shot out the glass patio door. Tried to blame it on their pets. He later confessed on air to his parents and they knew THR whole time. Everything and anything I do on my computer. When we were staying at a friend's place on holiday, Miso and I accidentally broke her guest bed. Like, one of the legs gave way and the whole thing collapsed. It was an ultra cheap metal frame and so found a meat cleaver and we banged the bejesus out of that bed to get it back into shape. To no avail. I had to ring my friend and confess. Due to the conservative nature of my parents and their firm beliefs, we have allowed them to believe that we are chaste and good and would never actually have sex. You're gross. We haven't lied, but we have certainly been guilty of omission. We are getting married this year, and my friend with the broken bed is a bridesmaid, and is working on her speech. We banged the bejesus out of that bed. Yeah, you did. Up top. Comma, how will we fix the bed frame? Comma, well, I'm pretty sure beds are made of meat, comma, obviously, but we have no cleaver. Dang, comma, wait, I think I saw one earlier in the drawer with the wrenches and tools. Comma, saved. Get the cleaver, you horny bastard. Beds are too easy to break. I recently broke my girlfriend's box springs just from tickling her too much. Now when we have sex on it we have to be ultra careful not to make re-break worse. I recently broke my girlfriend's box springs. You should probably take her to see a gynecologist. Comma, I'm sorry. How did it happen? Did you just propose the deal to the teacher or is there more backstory? I texted him asking if I could do a very special favor for him if he fixed her car. He called and asked what the favor would be and I said me on my knees. No questions asked after that. He knew me for years. He knew I wasn't fucking around. How does praying lead to a blowjob? Ask an altar boy. Ha-hero. Nervous laughter. Praying intensifies. Wow. Just straight to the blowjob, eh? I was expecting a good couple hours of haggling up from I'll help grade assignments. I have a very upfront personality and he knew that. So I proposed what I could and he took it. I also wasn't his actual student in his automotive class, but he was very involved with my ROTC program and was right next door to our company's classroom. He was the same branch of service as my unit was, so we were still pretty involved in school. No control over my personal grades however. Serious question. Are you a guy or a girl? Edit. I wasn't trying to be offensive. I was just curious, also I didn't think to check the post history. Suemi. My sister, stepbrother, and I are all adults now, ranging from mid-20s to early 30s. I was the oldest, so I had already moved out by the time my sister was a teenager. We were all out to dinner with our parents recently, exchanging funny stories back and forth. Then this came up. Stepbrother, to my sister. I guess we're all old enough for this story now. So, remember how you would call me to see if our parents were awake yet? Sister, we are not old enough for that story. That's where it ended. But I assume my sister was sneaking out at night and calling my stepbrother in the morning to see if it was safe to sneak back in. And despite being in her late 20s now, still doesn't want my parents to know about it. Edit. Yeah, motherfuckers need Jesus. I was sure you were going to say they were sleeping with each other. I just unzipped in class for nothing. Syra zips. I don't know how to apologize for letting you down about this. Sorry I didn't sleep with my sister. We're sorry too. Am I the only one that thinks Opio's us a Wincest story? Sorry, I don't have any. This feels like a weird thing to apologize for. This has me laughing hysterically. Poor op. Reddit has made your innocent story forever unclean. That the reason I have such low self-esteem is because they always berate me and make fun of me. I'm not that close to my parents, but as an adult I'm a lot mellower and recognize the fact that they're nice people who did their best. So, there's nothing that would be catastrophic for me if they found it out, but I'd be a little glum about the unnecessary trauma it would put them through if they ever found out how many people I've slept with, how many of them were dudes, or the sheer quantity of drugs I did at one point. I masturbate like everyday PLZ. Don't tell mom. She can smell your mayonnaise. You can't smell mayonnaise. It's an instrument so you can only hear it. My cousin and I had sexual relations. More than once. Edit. Since it seems like there is interest, I will tell my story once I get home in a few hours. Been busy at work and haven't had much time to read it. Edit number 2. The story. It all started when we were in our mid-teens and would carry on every summer for the next few years. My mom, dad and I were the only part of the family who lived in Alberta. The rest of them were in BC. So every summer we'd pack up and head west for vacation. Sometimes it would be camping, other times we'd stay in a hotel, but we always made sure to visit the extended family. One year, when I was around 15, we ended up staying for a couple weeks on Vancouver Island, which is where most of my dad's family lives. My aunt and uncle, my dad's brother and his wife, had a huge house and offered to put us up for however long we needed. Ended up being a little over a week. They had a pool and everything. It was awesome. His daughter, my cousin, we'll call her C, and I always got along well, despite living one province away and not seeing each other often. It was her room I ended up staying in. In addition to her bed there was also a hide-a-bed couch, which is where I would sleep. I always thought she was pretty. She was nice to look at, and she was a little over a year older than me. Our second day there we all ended up in their pool, and although nothing happened in there, she did rub up against me a few times, which to the younger guy was just totally awesome. Most nights the adults would hang out in the backyard drinking and catching up, or they would go out for the evening. One night, after the parents had left, we watched movies in her room. We didn't pay much attention to what was on TV. We talked instead. We talked about my life back home, her life, how school went the previous year, that kind of thing. She also asked me if I had a girlfriend back home. I said I did. I didn't. She also asked if my fake girlfriend and I had done stuff. Don't remember what I said, but it was probably yes. We were sitting on her bed watching the movie, and she laid her head on my shoulder. I didn't realize she had fallen asleep until I had to wake her to let her know the movie was done. I think I may have fallen asleep a little as well. She turned to me as she shut off the TV and looked me in the eyes, so I kissed her. We made out a little, but just kissing and awkward teenage groping. Nothing happened that night. The next few nights, the same thing happened. Parents would go out, we'd watch a movie, or listen to music, on her bed, and things would progress a little further. During one of our sessions my hand slipped down her pants. She must have liked it because it wasn't long until the clothes were off. We had sex that night. It was my first time. My parents and I stayed with them for a bit, and things would happen most nights, unless someone else was in the house, as her door had no locks. After a week and a bit we left to go visit my mother's family. Nothing exciting happened during that part though. Next year was a little different. My aunt, uncle, and cousin, and my mom and dad and I, we all rented out cabins. Each family had their own, but my cousin and I still found ways to be alone. The third summer, which ended up being the last time we were all together like that, was back at their house. They put us up for 2 weeks, and I had to stay in her room again. Things were different that time. We both had grown up. She was already out of high school. I was in my last year, and we were different people by then. We still did stuff though. We were both more experienced and wanted to show what we knew. The next year my grandma, dad and uncle's mom died, so the only vacation my dad could afford to take was for the funeral. I hardly saw her as she had moved out, and only came around for a couple dinners at her parents' place. Nothing happened that trip, as it was kind of a depressing time. The following years life got in the way. Work, school. We both ended up getting married, to different people of course, and had families of our own. She found me on Facebook when I was 26, and by that time I hadn't seen her for almost 7 years. We chatted for a bit. Nothing sexual, just two people catching up. She deleted her Facebook profile a year later and I haven't talked to her since. I'm 34 now. I'm sure at the time we both knew what we were doing was wrong, but sometimes teenage hormones just get in the way. I miss her, but it wasn't like we were in love or anything. It was just something we did when we were together. It never went past piff sex and oral though, and she was adopted, so we weren't blood related, so I guess it wasn't that bad. Our parents would flip out if they found out though. Maybe they already know. Edit. First gold etc. Thank you etc. Much love etc. A guy I used to play music with was outed as having a long-term and deliberate sexual relationship with his cousin. His girlfriend at the time went through his Facebook and discovered a load of dirty messages and conversations between the two of them. So she did the only thing she could do in that situation. Screenshotted the worst bits, put it on Facebook and tagged his entire family and a lot of his friends. Not calling you a liar, but you're a liar if you don't give us a screenshot of this masterpiece. My actual grades. I'm adopted. Me too. Damn. If my mom knew, it would break her heart. I didn't have their consent to use the internet and visit PBS.org. I created an earbuds account before I was 13. That I lost my virginity when I was 15. They think I was 18, and I don't have the heart to correct the mistake. My parents think I'm a virgin. They are correct. My parents think I'm not a virgin. They are wrong. They thought you were 18 when you were actually 15? Tell them. Bruh. He probably isn't 3,425 years old either. I'm confused by this, mostly because, 1. Why do they think they know when you lost your virginity? Did you have a pop my cherry party or something? Did you make a big announcement at 18 I'm not a virgin? I just don't get how that information was leaked in the first place. 2. If you did spill the beans for some reason, why did you throw out the wrong date in the first place? 3. When, why, how would you have an opportunity to correct such a miscommunication? 4. Why does this matter? My parents have no idea when I lost my virginity. Why would they even know in the first place? Seems bizarre to me. That party I threw in high school when you guys were out of town for the weekend that you found out about due to my snitch ass neighbors, wasn't just some guys drinking beer and playing poker, it was actually an ecstasy fueled orgy, and yes, your bed was used. What the fuck kind of high school do you go to? Exclamation point. A rich one. Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about. My high school was full of the children of rich hippies and a lot of shit like that went down. I was on a massive scholarship and marveled at the rich people's debauchery. Everyone there was also somehow really hot and they were all rich enough to pay for cleaning services, so it was chill. I may or may not have participated. That scholarship got me a lot more than just an academic education. Edit. I mean, yeah man. It got me some fun times, which TBH was what I meant of course, but it did educate me in how uninformed and sheltered, and dangerously so, some of the upper class can be. Many were just regular people, and some were lovely, but an alarming number of kids seemed only to have regard for themselves and their possessions and viewpoints. It scares me still to think how many resources my former classmates control. Yeah dude, rich kids are crazy. My school's student parking lot had nicer cars than the faculty one. By far. Hot. My mom read through my Facebook messages and found out that I had sex with 3 people. She called me a slut 4 years after. She never needs to know what that number actually is. Your mom sounds like a very unhappy person. You spelled bitch wrong. Your bitch sounds like a very unhappy person. Very bitch, such unhappy much cunt, wow. Mine's similar. My mom walked in on me and a friend. I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. This was just a very close FWB, cuddling after sex once. I was 19, and she called me a slut for a real long time after, like would send me letters and emails. Basically just to call me a slut. Yes, the letters and emails. I once received a birthday card stating, even if we don't like your choices, we still love you. Ooh, nice. My mom was really pissed off that I went against her plan for me, which wasn't really a plan at all. She wanted me to volunteer at the local church or nursing home, get in good with someone, and inherit their money or some crap like that. I went to college instead. When I started dating my HS boyfriend, who was the most rotten person I've ever met, she thought that was the end. He was going to take care of me, etc. Anything, so she didn't have to do anything further with me, forever foisting me off on other people. When she caught me with my friend, even after knowing I broke up with douche boy, I can't even explain the hatred I saw on her face. Astounding. That is absolutely horrible. It takes a cruel person to act that way toward her own daughter. Remind her that you decide what kind of nursing that she gets put in. Try not to suck any dick on the way to the parking lot. I feel our relationship hasn't been the same either. To this day, she still loves to reference it every chance she gets. And nothing pisses me off more than this. We always hear, for example, that divorce story where the wife is a crazy bitch who took custody of the kids, yada yada. The top reply is always something like, OMG you poor thing, or I hope things work out for you. Number, I'm 99% sure you're not telling us half the story, and I'm 99% sure half the things you just said were exaggerated or made up. My mom is like that. My sister can do no wrong, but I obviously fucked my life up. She treats my sister and her dumb pisses in bottles boyfriend 10 times better than me and my wife, because we're atheist and they're Christian. It pisses me off. Edit. Alright, a lot of people are asking about the passing in bottles, and I'll clarify here. My sister is 22 and he's 31 and he can't get a job, dropped out of college, and is dumb as a sack of bricks. I've tried to see the good, but honestly I just can't. He told us that he pisses in bottles and leaves them in his room because he can't stand shitting up to waste time peeing. It baffles me. What baffles me more is how my family is just fine with it. WTF. Double standards hurt. I'm sorry you had to put up with that from the people who are supposed to be the most understanding and forgiving in your life. 37. Santa is real. Nobody tell them please. It would break their hearts and someday they'll figure it out on their own anyway. Edit. This was gilded. I have no idea what the appropriate response is, so I'll just say thanks and Google the appropriate action. Thank you. Edit. I know. My parents told me when I was about 10 that honey, Santa isn't real. I thought, wow, how can you live in such denial? Yeah, parents have been telling themselves and their children this for years, but there was a time where Santa openly talked with people and people talked to him. But then people started questioning Santa's gift-giving power. They were jealous. In fact, they were so jealous that they crucified one of Santa's elves on a candy cane. Now Santa doesn't openly talk to people anymore, and people stopped believing in him. Come mommy and daddy, you'd better come too. Be still and be silent. It's time that you knew. You've asked for the answer. You're wondering how. And maybe, just maybe, you're old enough now. You think you've matured and you've lost the pretense, cause when you grow up you need stuff that makes sense. And when all our fantasies fade with our youth, we swallow the fact and we call it the truth. But don't worry mommy, cause I understand. You've no time for magic with bills in your hand. So think for a moment. You know what you feel. Just open your mind, and you'll find that he's real. God, I hate anti-Santas. He's an anti-Santite. All the drugs I've tried, or rather, how many times I've tried them. They know I tried some shit and I know they tried some shit, but I'd like to keep it vague. Why? Cause my mom is always worried about me, and she can't help it. My freshman year of college my parents got notified that I had been essentially issued a slap on the wrist for drinking. They don't know that it was because I had just woke up from a sorority house flower bed, I think, and was walking the opposite way from my dorm at 3 AM in jorts, boots and a mullet wig with a Texas flag cape. Probably my religious views, or lack thereof. I have the opposite problem. My parents firmly believe that everyone who is religious is ignorant and below them. Do your parents own a Fido restore? Edit. My first gold. Mum, get the camera. Mum. Edit. Obligatory thanks for the gold. Redditor. Imgur webpage. Most reluctant upvote I have given. I went to Catholic school all my life, but I told my mom I didn't believe in God when I was 12. 10/10 would do again because I genuinely didn't believe in religion after a lot of thinking, and I got to sleep in on Sundays from then on. I told my dad I didn't want to go to church anymore when I was 12. Rather than being mad and forcing me to go, he said okay, and I started staying at home on Sundays. 20 years later I came back to my religion and am very happy. He did the right thing by allowing me to discover my faith on my own terms when I was ready. Edit. To all those who have had negative experiences in a similar situation, I just want to say I understand how going through that would be very difficult, and it isn't right at all. I hope that even if you do not ever have a relationship with God, that at least something can be mended in your relationship with your parents. Family is so important, and maybe now in adulthood, or when that time comes for you younger people, you can explain to your parents how what they did affected you and ended up driving you away from religion. It won't work for everyone, but I think that it is important for these people to understand how they pushed you away and how that wasn't okay. Your dad did the right thing. It's never good to force your religious views on someone, even if that someone is your child. Everyone has the right to believe in what they please, even extremists, until they start infringing upon the rights of others. My time in Iraq and what happened. That I'm bisexual. Apparently B people will just duck everything that moves according to my dad. I would get disowned. Edit. Fuck not duck. Stupid autocorrect. Edit 2. A comment about me being B has almost tripled my karma. Upvotes for all. Does he feel you lent to the pro dodgeball scene? Lol, I meant fuck. Autocorrect sucks. Autocorrect ducks. Fixed. Yep, I know my mother has no problems with gays and lesbians, no problems with straight people, but lots of problems with bisexuals. It's weird that I didn't get laid off from a really good job my dad once got me. I got fired for fucking one of the office girls in the bathroom and was caught by the CEO. That I'm gay as fuck. Family's homophobic. Edit. Thank you all for your kind words and encouragement. Thank you for gold as well. I'm only 16 at the time and plan to come out when I turn 18. Me too, man. I just sat through an evening of gay rights and gay marriage TV shows debates, Irish gay marriage referendum coming up this summer, with my family members flipping from statements like I'll definitely vote yes in the referendum for gay marriage to statements like I'd be afraid that two gay parents would try to make any kid they adopted be gay like they are. I am 27 and stuck in an unemployment isolated living in the family home rut for years, and shit like this just brings me down even more. I don't think people realize how emotionally numb you have to become in order to block out all the negativity and try to remain neutral when shit like this is said. I think I'm just an empty husk with good lying skills right now. There was a radio show the other day about a government minister that recently came out. People were texting and saying stuff. One woman said I'd have no problem if my child told me they were gay, to which my mother said yeah, it's okay saying that, but you'd be different if it actually happened. That's a real Ralph Wiggum heartbreak gif moment, when you know that, deep down, they think it's wrong as hell and wouldn't really like it. Fuck being gay. Edit. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that posted a comment. Your kind words mean a lot and are really appreciated. And just to clarify that me saying fuck being gay is me being angry about my situation and not a slight against anyone that's gay. There are a lot of really good people on Reddit. 3. Yep. My mom's made several comments. I'm sure she knows by now. But I'm scared about my dad finding out, and I know grandparents will never know. My mom still calls my boyfriend, friend, and NBSP. How is your friend doing? Mom, you know he is not my friend, right? So, how is he doing? And NBSP. My mom, while not homophobic, still doesn't face it completely, but she accepts me and has been supportive. Coming out to her was most likely the most difficult thing I had to do. Call him your sexy buddy, she'll get it real quick. About once a year my dad asks me, do you have a special friend? It's kind of cute. I used something before I was of legal age, a lot, and it was not alcohol or tobacco. Jesus, how many times did you vote? I think he ran for president before 35. He rented a PT Cruiser before he turned 25. Drugs and alcohol before the legal age. Matt, stepping foot in a PT Cruiser. Disappointed. Club Penguin, I feel like it was a dildo. Well, I am a 20 years old son of Muslim family living in a western country. I am gay. The only reason I moved out into my own apartment was because I have a boyfriend. My mother knows I'm gay but says it's a sin and doesn't wanna talk with me anymore until I go straight again. My father does not know. He would probably kill me if he knew : but I enjoy every minute with my boyfriend and I don't give a fuck about my parents. The amount of cocaine and hookers I indulged in while I was making a shitload of money from that company I embezzled from. Truth story. Leonardo DiCaprio ! Confession to 3 felonies in one post. I believe that ties the record. I have 2 stories from college that if ever found out my parents would surely kill me. Both of these moments could have severely altered my future and ruined my life. These were 4-5 years ago. I will share one for now and the other if there is any interest, as these are very long stories. Towards the end of high school I started using some different pills and this carried into college. Typical stuff like oxycodone, Xanax, killer pins, SP Dart. Anyways, my junior year in college I had a very high tolerance towards Xanax, and one particular night we were going to a pretty big house party in an area of campus I had never been. I didn't know the people hosting the party and I found out about it late, so I was actually 9.5 milligrams of Xanax down at this point. If you don't know, that is an insane amount of Xanax and for some people could easily cause you to OD. At this time I was a 6 feet 3 inches 280 pounds male with a high tolerance, so I was still functional. We get to the party and I get about 6 beers deep, and at this point I am wrecked beyond belief. I go into the bathroom to piss, and being the douchebag I was, I looked through the medicine cabinets and drawers of the bathroom. I found a full script of Adderall, which I had never taken before, and some other various paraphernalia I am going to leave out as they are not important to the story. So once again, being the douchebag I am, I decide all of this is going home with me. I had brought a backpack with me to transport all of my beers to the party, so I put it on. I went around and told all of my friends I was feeling very sick and needed to get home. I am never one to not hold my alcohol drugs, so they know something is wrong. So I head to the bathroom and fill my backpack up and splash water on my face and cough a lot to make myself look sick. We then all headed out and started our walk back to our apartment. Not 4 minutes into our walk we are stopped by the police because it was about 1 to 2 a.m. and we were walking down the street of campus and they wanted to make sure the girls were okay. Note at this point here are 6 of us, and of the 6, 2 of us are 21. I am 20, and the other 3 are 20 as well. The cop asked us if we were all of age and we all said yes. The 2 people who are 21 offer up their licenses real quick, and that was enough to appease the cop. If he had ID'd all of us I would have gotten a drinking ticket and potentially had my bag searched. Had I been caught I would have had charges for underage drinking, paraphernalia, A stolen controlled substance, intent to distribute. It was a full script, so a huge amount of Adderall, not to mention I had cellophane. And to top it all off, I was on school property. This would have probably resulted in a short jail sentence and being expelled from my university. So after all of this, we are ecstatic and my friends could not believe what I had done, as I am not typically this kind of person. We go back to our apartment and the girls go to bed and it is just us 4 guys left. We start doing mass amounts of Adderall, smoking weed and drinking. In total we had, I believe, 30-40 pills of 30 milligrams Adderall. Note, at this time we had all been up since 9 to 10 AM and it is now 3 AM. We continue getting fucked up, smoking cigs, watching Entourage episodes and occasionally playing Super Smash Brothers. All of a sudden my girlfriend wakes up and it is 10 AM the next day. We are still partying. Eventually we run out of beers and just keep taking Adderall and doing whatever it is we can find, as we are also amped up. None of us had done it before. We were playing with hand sanitizer and fire for a good couple of hours. If you have never done this while annihilated, I definitely recommend it. Eventually it comes down to just me and my one other friend. We are just chilling in his room doing more Adderall and smoking some cigs while he plays on his electric piano. This is where shit got nuts. Note, it is about 10 PM at this point and we had been awake roughly 36 hours and abusing this Adderall. I started seeing Call of Duty on my friend's TV screen, which is turned off. I don't know how or why, but it was the most insane hallucination I have ever had. I then realized that just about anything I start focusing on is absolutely nuts. My buddy starts seeing odd things as well and we realize that we are hallucinating from the drugs and sleep deprivation. We spent the next 5-6 hours just staring at stuff and walking around outside smoking cigs and looking like retards. Of all of the things we saw, the craziest was staring at this poster. 123 posters webpage. The best way to describe it was colored warfare. It is so hard to really describe it, but I could see bombs going off and gunshots and the breeze in the treetops. After all of that insaneness, my buddy had finally had enough and went to bed. Now he had probably 3-4 pills of Adderall to my 10. I tried to go to bed and eventually realized it was never going to happen. I started having an insane panic attack and sweating like crazy. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't calm down. I felt like I was falling and going to die. I have had panic attacks before as I suffer from mental illness, but nothing like this. Nothing could calm me down and my girlfriend began to worry. I had been up for over 48 hours and I finally decided to call the school toxicology line. I told them everything I had taken to the T and they advised me to immediately go to the hospital. I knew that I did that my parents would surely catch me as I was on their insurance. So I tried my best to just deal with it and sleep. At about 10 AM I finally gave up and had my GF take me to the ER. This was the worst experience of my life. I had to wait almost 3 hours before seeing a doctor, all the while feeling like I could die at any moment. I felt like everything was sucking air out of me and I couldn't breathe. They eventually let me sit a room alone so I could try to calm down, while repeatedly asking me if I tried to kill myself because of the amount of drugs I had taken. Eventually I was seen by a doctor and he was shocked at the fact I was awake. He told me no matter how much Adderall I took, there is no way it could offset that much Xanax. I tried to explain that I had never done Adderall and I had done Xanax multiple times, but he still couldn't understand why I was awake. After running some tests, they gave me a shot of something and sent me on my way. I got home and slept for over 24 hours straight and woke up feeling like I was dead. I called my dad and told him I had a stomach problem, which he believed, and I got 100% away with it all. I have not done a prescription drug since that awful day. Story 2. Reddit webpage. NOLA Part 1. Reddit webpage. NOLA Part 2. Reddit webpage. As requested, here is the other story. If it is not completely obvious, I was an absolute idiot with my decisions back in the day and I very well could have ended up a college dropout with a record. I put myself into some horrible situations and the one I will describe below was the worst. As I have mentioned before, I have a bit of mental illness and weed always helped along with it. I suffer from a multitude of things, but the worst being intrusive thoughts. Almost every night of my life I have extreme anxiety that someone is going to break into my home and attempt to murder me, and this is exacerbated by weed. So one hand while awake, weed would help me. At night it was torture. Alcohol is the only thing that can let me fall asleep like a normal person. This information is important later. Anyways, one of my friends and I had a regular dealer that we always purchased from, and he was always a bit odd. He actually was running on some platform for local government to get medical marijuana legalized, and he was an overall moron. Anyways, most times we would go over to buy from him, he would be chilling in the shed behind his house with his SU and hum on. We would smoke up and talk and then be on our way with our new sack. One particular day he calls us up that he has some of the best stuff he has ever had and wants to make sure we get some before he sell a QP of it. So of course we skip a class and drive on down. Note, this is a shitty hour of our city. As normal we smoke up and this shit is amazing. We buy our little quarter bag and are about to be on our way. The guy asks if we wouldn't mind waiting up because he is selling a QP to a guy he has never met before, and it is currently him, his SO who is pregnant, his SOS mom, and my friend and I. We agree to hang around to make sure everything goes okay and figure what is just one guy going to do. 30 minutes later a 4-5-year-old Tahoe pulls up and 6 guys get out. This should have been red flag number 1, but we were so high it didn't even register. The guys come back and smoke up with us and shoot the shit for a bit before they get down to business. All the guys were funny and we were having a good old time. Then it hit me. We were about to be robbed and it wasn't going to be pretty. All while this was going on and we were having a good time, I realized 2 of the guys were standing right next to the door the whole time, no matter what. Even when someone passed them a bowl they wouldn't move from those spots. I didn't want to assume this, so I figure I would have a quick test. I said I was tired of sitting and was going to smoke a cigarette outside the shed and one of them could have my seat. My plan was to then ask my friend if he wanted to come so we could get the fuck out. As soon as I stood up, the head guy pulls a gun bigger than I have ever seen before or since and points it to my head. I would describe what I felt in this moment, but there are no words. I immediately threw up my hands and sat back down. The guy just says, "You know what it is," and starts taking everything we have, all the while pointing the gun at everyone a bit at a time. All the while the women are crying and screaming and my buddy and I are stoned as shit and terrified. The scariest thing is this guy was like 16 years old and that made him all the more dangerous. After taking the QP, all of our phones, our wallets, and purses, they start to leave. The guy looks back and says if he sees anyone leave the shed he will start spraying. They leave and the art dealer says he is going to get his gun from inside and go after him. My friend and I tackle him and tell him if he opens that door we will kill him. We sat there all shaking for 15 minutes. My friend and I then head home unsure how to handle what the fuck just happened. Being the stoned idiots we were, we decided the only way we could cover this and our parents not find out what really happened was to make up a fake police report. So we drive to a spot on our campus to make sure no one was around that could have been a witness and then press one of the blue emergency buttons and claim we were just robbed at gunpoint. This area off campus had never had something like this happen in the history of our school, so the police were very suspicious. We were interviewed separately numerous times all the while we were stoned. Somehow they couldn't prove we were lying, so they stopped interviewing us. They then sent out cops to look for a possibly ditched wallet or maybe a suspect. Obviously nothing was found. We only ever told a few people the truth about what really happened that day, as we didn't want anyone to ever find out and potentially let it slip to where we could get caught. A week later my dealer saw one of the guys at a movie theater and called one of his boys to come and shoot him. The guy shot him in the chest, but he lived and our dealer was arrested. So here I am terrified of being robbed, and a group of guys who robbed me and of them was shot now has my license and can easily find me at any time. Nothing ever came up of it and we never heard from anyone involved ever again. I have never really been the same since and am actually slightly more racist because of the whole event. I actually couldn't listen to rap music for a while because of the whole thing. Just hearing about people robbing people made me so angry. I realize my stories probably don't flow the best, but I just wanted to get this out quick so you guys could give it a read. I have another story from a trip down to NOLA I may post as well. Finally, the NOLA story. This story took place after college. For work I travel a lot and am constantly in other cities other than my own, and I happen to have a friend at the same company is also working in the same city as me currently. Generally we both fly home for the weekends and spend time in our own respective home cities. One weekend my fiancée was going to be out of town and my friend is single, so I said fuck it, let's go to NOLA. Some quick things to know. I have been to NOLA 10 plus times as I have family there. My friend has never been. I have a very high tolerance for alcohol and my friend does not. That Thursday night we left work at 6 PM and made the 8-hour drive to NOLA. We get in pretty late and we decide to just have a quick walk down Bourbon Street so my friend, who I will refer to as Adam from now on, could get a quick fix of what he was in for. We couldn't stay out till late as we had to work virtually from our hotel the next day. Within minutes of getting on B Street we see a black guy who is hammered walk up to a couple of white college girls and grab his dick and say, "Hey girl, you wanna fuck on this?" I then look to Adam and say, "Welcome to Bourbon Street." We walked down a bit and went to Pat O'Brien's for a quick drink and then head back to our hotel. Pretty tame and responsible night thus far. Friday we both worked most of the day and just stepped out of the hotel to grab lunch. Finally 6 PM EST hits and we are good to go and unplug for the weekend. We start Friday night off by just walking B Street and having my buddy try all of the NOLA staples. Hurricanes, frozen lake, Pim's Cup 57, Chevy app, Pat Obman, Gypsum lightning drink I can't remember. They top off a blue drink with moonshine. This drink will end most people's nights. So by about 9 PM we are sufficiently drunk and looking to eat dinner. I did a quick urban spoon and we had a great intoxicated meal that I seem to not remember. At this point we start hitting up more bars and just take in the atmosphere. As you can imagine, just a couple of guys shooting the shit and drinking and talking shit with random other tourists and enjoying the music. Then at about midnight we head out and I start talking to a random guy on the street since he was from the same city as me originally. Eventually I figure out he is trying to see if I want to buy some coke. Note, I had never tried coke before and neither had my friend. We both decided we were in and we followed this guy down a side street off B Street for this to go down. Being the NOLA savvy guy I am, I only ever have $60 on me. Enough to get them away and enough to save your life, my grandpa always told me. My friend has $40. I asked him what $100 will get and it wasn't a lot. He said he had some uncut stuff that he would give us a bump off for $25 each, and for the other $50 he would give us a small sack of lower quality stuff. Now I had never tried coke before, but I know 100% a bump isn't worth much. But I figure if it is truly high quality and it is our first time, and we are already drunk, what the hell, let's do it. He grabs a little spoon from his back pocket and takes a little scoop out and puts it to my nose, and I don't admit, I have snorted pills a lot in the past so this was no problem. My friend ended up just putting it in his mouth. After this, just to be nice, he said he would give me a little extra for my gums. At the time I had no idea why. I rubbed it all over my gums and then it hit me. Holy fucking shit, my face felt like it was falling off. It seriously felt like the front of my face weighed more than the back and it was falling off. It was an amazing rush and my whole body felt amazing. All of a sudden we were both insanely happy and could barely stop smiling and just bopping around drinking our beers. We were so fucked up we didn't even think about the fact that we just did coke off a random person's spoon on a side street in the middle of NOLA. So after both agreeing that coke is truly a hell of a drug, we continue walking around and my friend accidentally bumps into a guy. This guy gets right into Adam's face and it looks like he is going to fight him. We are standing right next to a strip club. Imagine that, right, a strip club at NOLA. And I run to the bouncer and tell him to grab my friend and bring him in and we will drop some money. Thankfully he grabs Adam and we are both safe inside as the guy who was giving him shit wasn't allowed in. Very strict rules for getting in some of these clubs. If you look like a hood person and act like a hood person, you have zero chance. We then realize that the only thing better than drinking is drinking while on coke. The next day we wake up and can't believe what a crazy night it had been. We woke up around noon and decided to get brunch and do some coke before we head out. We eat an amazing meal and start drinking early with some bloodies. At the bar everyone is already hammered as they had just had the annual running from the Bulls or something. It was cool because we had a lot of entertainment to go along with our brunch. I wanted to make sure Adam at least did some touristy things besides drugs while there, so we went to the Mississippi and Morning Call and a few other tourist spots. We also hit up the French Quarter and strolled around getting drinks here and there and doing more coke until we ran out. Now we had two missions: get more drunk and find more coke. Adam, being the lightweight, eventually fell asleep with his head on a bar while I was in the bathroom. This is where I decided the mission now fell on me. My buddy at 5 PM was already asleep. Those damn blue lightnings or whatever had taken him. I took Adam back to the hotel and let him sleep while I waited in the lobby for our guy to come by with the stuff. Because I only wanted $120 worth. The main guy wouldn't come as it wasn't worth his time. Some guy drove up to my hotel and I hopped in his car and he handed me a sack. I get back up to my room and instantly after tasting it realize it is fake. Major buzzkill right there. I realize I should grab some sleep too and deal with this when we wake back up. My fiancée and I always deemed this to be 2 nights in one day, as in you go party all afternoon and crash and then go back out late night. We slept until about 10 PM and now we were 100% determined to find more coke before beginning our last night of adventure. We called the guy up again and explained what happened and that we were pissed. He felt bad and said he would meet us on B Street and pick us up. Now at this point I start to think that maybe it isn't worth it, but I told him to come on by. We grab out another $120 at an ATM and wait for him. He shows up in no shit a black Tahoe. I told Adam to wait and I checked every window of it before we got it. I told Adam to sit up front and I would sit directly behind the dealer. He pulls off to a side street and offers us a line on the house on top of a CD case. Adam, being the noob he is, coughs while trying to take a hit and sprays coke everywhere. This was the aforementioned uncut stuff and the dealer gets pissed. Eventually he realizes it was a mistake and actually snorted some of it off of Adam's seat to salvage what he could. He sold us our $120 bag and we were on our way. First thing we had to do was grab food as we hadn't eaten since brunch. We go to one of the pizza and frozen drinks places and get 2 slices each. We then drank a couple of beers and hit the strip. We eventually went to a place where a girl dances on the bar and talks to people via a microphone. She essentially tries to get you to buy overpriced shots because she is hot. She asked Adam and I if we were any good at quarters and of course that was my game of choice, so I was pretty excited. She told me about quarter tic-tac-toe, where you buy 9 shots and arrange them in a tic-tac-toe board and try to win the game. She said if I beat her she would buy the shots, but if I lost we had to buy them and another 9 on top. Also if you make a shot you take it. I 3-0'd her. She didn't make a single one. Then other bartenders came over and took some of our shots and this is where the fight starts. I took 3 shots while playing the game and then her and the other bartenders took the other 6 and then they put them on our tab. They probably take advantage of wasted people, but I am not a schmuck, so I got them cleared off by the manager. Luckily I had pictures of the tic-tac-toe board and the 9 shots used for the game. After leaving here we did some coke and headed to the Harrah's. I am typically a big gambler, but because Adam isn't I said I was going to play $60 worth on roulette and then we would leave. If you don't know, $60 doesn't last long in a casino. Sometimes only 5 minutes. I did $1.60 spin. I put $5 on 12 numbers. I hit my 5 and profited a quick $120. I tipped the dealer and we left. I now had some more coke cash for later if needed. We then bar hopped and got trashed and eventually ended up at Cat's Meow and just laughed our asses off at all the drunk people trying to sing. After having enough we finally relented to get one more quick sack of coke and go to one more bar before calling the trip over. Adam is gone at this point, so I tell him to just wait at a bar while I get some stuff. It is insanely easy as a 20-something white male to get coke in NOLA. Within 10 minutes I was following a guy to a hotel stairwell to get the stuff. I head back to the bar and would you believe that Adam is gone? I looked everywhere for him and called him 10+ times. About an hour later I find him and decide that was enough and walked him home. The next day was the longest and most painful drive of my life as our 2-day binge of coke and alcohol was over. Haven't done coke since, but I have to say that was some of the most fun I have ever had. It was me. I broke that thing when I was 12. I owe you like $5. I'm sorry. Remember when you broke that thing when you were 12? It was Emmy Barry. I was the thing. On all levels except physical. I am evolved. Edit. I can't tell if people are taking me seriously, but it's a reference to this YouTube webpage. I found the furry pot calling the kettle black. You wolf brother too? It's actually a reference to Paranabra from the Wheel of Time series. This is the only real answer. How much sex I had in their house between sophomore year and junior year of high school. They know I have had a lot of sex there over the past 5 years with my now fiancée. We are 25, but I think they would be mortified how much I use that basement for porking my HS girlfriend. This is their son, Imga webpage, when he's away from home. I don't know what kind of shit you're trying to pull, son, but this is my house. And I never want to see that soft focus filter shit again. Use a filter that shows off your makeup or so help me God. I did a marijuana once. Becky, I'm afraid that my parents will find out I was adopted, and that they'll abandon me and try to track down their real kid if they ever discover the truth. You can't put your awkwardness with women all on your parents. At some point you have to take charge of your romantic life and avoid thinking that you have to seek the approval of anyone outside of your friendship with the girl. Edit. Gold. Well, that's a great way to start off my new year. No, this is Reddit. Everyone is a victim here, get used to it. Dude, I can relate so much to this. I think parents do this because they're awkward and don't know how to have a regular conversation about relationships with their kids, so they sacrifice their kids' humility for theirs. It's subconsciously selfish. I have 2 older sisters who did this to me. Fucking hated it. Call them fat. It's the thermonuclear trump card. Used to date this girl that my mom loved. I broke up with this girl twice. Dates 2x. My mom still gives me shit years later and constantly updates me on her life. I don't care. The girl was one of the worst people I've ever met. My mom doesn't know the whole story and therefore blames me. My parents are bad for this still, and I'm in my mid-20s. When I was younger, my parents would pick me up from school and ask every girl they passed if she was my GF or wanted to be. If I even mentioned talking to a female, they're convinced it must be a new GF and they want to meet her. The last time I brought a GF to their house for dinner, my father waited until about halfway through the meal to ask her if she spits or swallows. Without skipping a beat, she replied swallow and then started laughing. Thank fuck. Another time my mother cried and lost her shit because I didn't want to invite my fuck buddy to lunch with her. My sister found out about her and told them. I have never brought another woman to my parents' house since. I just can't chance what the fuck my parents will say. I know they love me very much. I just wish they didn't take such pleasure in making me feel awkward. What the fuck, glad she was able to laugh it off, but I don't blame you for not wanting to bring anyone else around them. Nice try, dad. Damn farmer bastards. My mom knows I smoke weed occasionally. That's fine. Hell, I've smoked with her. She can never know that I smoke in my room. She'll get paranoid about it being a fire hazard. I might legitimately get kicked out of the house. I'm Zach. Sorry about the little dick.